Hi there, I'm Budda, and you're watching Dr. Guitar, a show for all you guitarists out there. Today, I will show you my Mesa Boogie Lonestar. It's a 100-watt amp. I will be using it as I use it live. And this is my main live amp at the moment. It's a 100 watt, so when it is with this speaker cabinet, which is the most common combination that I use it with the 112 with a Black Shadow Celestion, Mesa Boogie Black Shadow. I use this amp and this speaker in almost every situation, except when I play bigger venues, and then I use it alongside the 112. I use the 410, or I'll use just the 410. It depends on the venue. But usually this is my main rig. This is an incredible amp. It's a Mesa Boogie, so it's super versatile, and it has a lot of features. That's Mesa Boogie way. But it can be a super simple amp, as they usually offer you. So let's gravitate to the Mesa Boogie. First, it is a 100-watt amp, 6L6 power tubes, but you can change it to EL34s if you want. I have it with 6L6. You can have each channel being 100 watt, 50 watt, or 10 watt. It depends on what you want. I almost always use it on 50 because I like the compression of the power tubes. You have diodes or tube rectifier on the back of the amp, and you have two operating modes: the tweed and the full power. The tweed has a little more breakup. We'll get there in a minute. Then you have two channels, and the great thing about the Lonestar is that the two channels are practically identical, being that the second channel has a little more gain to start with, but it's just a little bit more gain. So you can have practically two different channels. And it also has a solo switch, so you can have a raise in volume, and the solo is on the master. It's not it's not a boost on the preamp, so it won't overdrive it more. Let's start with the clean channel. It has a fan that I've just turned off because it makes this noise. Kind of a Second World War siren. So let's go to the clean channel on 50 watts. And I usually use it on 50 watts because this speaker is only 90 watts. So I kind of play safe. The clean channel. It's a great clean tone. This amp has a lot of bass, and it's probably the trickiest knob you have on the amp. And it has a really good reverb on the back. Let's get to know what the knobs amp. What I usually do to test an amp, and If you have been watching the show, you probably have already figured it out. I usually turn everything off, so all to 0, and then I try to hear what each knob does. So the gain, it's a gain, it gives me volume. As with all Fender amps, I don't have volume if I don't have EQ. So this is a very important thing to know about your amp. If this happens, it means you have, in this case, 4 gains. 1 master gain, and then 3 individual gains for each frequency. So you have the bass here. You hear it driving because I'm cranking the gain of the bass, so I'm driving the bass. This is really important to know how to get your tone. So if I'm cranking the mids, as usual, it's almost all the guitar tone is in the mids. And the treble, so now we know what to expect from the amp. We know the treble is giving us that nasally. The mids, it's the guitar itself, and the bass is the roundness on the bottom. So let's set it all. Let's set the mids at noon. I'm feeling I need a little more definition. Let's give it some bottom end. The presence. And I've said it in another episode. If you take this approach to any amp, you know it really easily. You'll get to know it really easily, and you'll get to know what the amp is able of providing you. So if you want to brighten your tone, you know you can use the presence more than the treble, because the treble in this amp is kind of a high mid-range, so it's the nasal part, and this is the sparkle part, the presence. The bass will compress the amp a lot, so if you want to have a more compressed feel, you just crank the bass a little bit and it compresses a little more. So this is a super important thing. And now let's hear how the gain reacts to the amp. So if you want to use the amp as a Fender amp, or as a Marshall Plexi, or as any vintage amp, here you have it. You have your channel, no reverb. You have your gain, but you're probably thinking, but the Fender amps, when they are cranked, they compress a lot more. Yeah, this can compress too. So you just need to push up the EQ a lot more by this proportion. So if this is in the middle, let's crank it both. And let's give it a push on here. And you'll have this. Okay, then you have your master channel volume, which is kind of a master. And this amp has two features. If you have the effects loop engaged, you have an output overall control and the solo. If you disengage the effect loop on the back of the amp, you'll disengage this part. So you'll get two channels and each one has its volume. So it's vintagier feeling. It's less controllable because if you want to, if you have a good balance between the two channels and just want to raise it all up or get it down both, you will have to do it manually and it reacts differently. But it can be a super vintagey, simple amp to use. And if you're not a amp tweaker, as I used to be, I wasn't an amp tweaker. I just fall in love with the versatility of the Mesa Boogie amps. But if you are not that guy that wants to tweak the amp and find a great thing and have really good balanced tones, you just want a good platform, and then you'll crank in your pedals or use the guitar volume. Here it is. You have an amp that is able to do it. Just crank the EQ, the gain EQ, right? Crank the gain and play with the guitar volume. And you have a super fucking great, unbelievable amp. I don't use it like this all the time, except when I'm playing just guitar and amp, and then I use it in a different way. But I've showed this on another episode. Usually I use it as a clean because I need a clean. As a kind of clean. Then I have a foot switch to pop up the volume, the reverb. And the reverb also has 2 modes. It's a Mesa Boogie, don't forget about it. So the reverb has a bright setting, which is more of a Fender Spring reverb sounding reverb. And it has a warm reverb, which is more of a plate studio reverb. So it's, if you want the Fender reverb, you need to have it on bright. It's more of a spring reverb. I usually set it that way. But if I'm playing with Trio Pagu, for example, which is a bossa nova band that I have, and it's a lot more jazzier, mellower than when I play with Budda Power Blues, with my nags and I want the reverb to be just smoothing out the tone and be very beautiful, very warm. I set it on warm, and it's a lot more discreet, a lot more subtle. Let me see what I'm using now. Okay, I have it on bright, and this is a thing that I'm sorry that I wish it wasn't this way, but the reverb is on the back, so you are always needing to adjust the reverb from the back. But let's set it to the clean channel. That's exaggerated. Now hear the warm. The difference is not that obvious, but when you're playing, you're feeling it. The bright reverb, it's more pronounced. The warm reverb, it's kind of sits beneath your tone. It's a great reverb. Let's use the cranked setting here. What more can you ask from an amp? It plays everything, and I'm still just on the first channel. So if I have this first fucking great amazing channel, why do I need a second one? Well, I need a second one, first of all, because I can have 2 settings of the same tone. So I can have this drive 1 that I've played, and I can have a clean one. love this amp. Really, really, really love this amp. It's my favorite amp of all time. It's the one I'm using the most because it's so versatile. And with the solo switch, unfortunately I don't have my foot switch here. My mistake. Because I'm now using it with the Boss ES8 system. So I'm switching the channels and the solo with the Boss ES8. So I don't have it here with me. But with the solo switching, you can have this tone. And the exact same tone, a little louder, which is kind of the same of doing. But you have this foot switchable, which is amazing. So sometimes I'm using a tone, the clean one, and I just need a bump in volume so I can cut better through the mix and play it easier. Or I'm using a fuzz, a super hard fuzz, and I want just a kick and volume, but I don't want more distortion. I don't want more drive into it. I don't want more compression. So the solo switch really makes me having the rhythm with the fuzz and then jumping it a lot louder in the mix with the solo switch. And as if this wasn't enough, we have the second channel. And the second channel is exactly the same as the first one. So let's set it exactly the same, although it's not the way I use it. Well, exactly the same, it's not right, it's not completely true, but it's super similar. It's a little more mid-rangey, but it's very subtle, the difference. So the drive one, let me take the reverb off. It's a little more mid-rangey, but they are super similar. They are not two worlds of difference, as for example in the Royal Atlantic amp, where the high where, how do they call it? You have the clean and the high-low channel, and the high-low is super completely different from the clean. Even the gain structure is completely different. This is almost the same with a little bump in the mid-range. So it's kind of having a tube screamer in the channel. So that's great on its own. You have the clean, and then you might have the exact same channel with a little more gain and a little more mid-range. As you see, I have the gain turned a little off from this one, a little lower, so we can match them. And as with all amps, the gain is super important, because as soon as you crank the gain a little bit, you immediately have a fatter, fuller tone. So that's super important. And I usually use this with a boost. This is usually my setting with a little more volume on the master of the channel, a little more presence, because it compresses a little more and it gets kind of it doesn't blows up. And since I have two separate reverb volumes, I use it separately. So I use a lot more reverb on the clean channel. And with the drive channel, actually let's do the same thing in the drive channel. So take all the EQ, you see, we now have a tone, we now have sound, which means that you have some sound coming out of the amp besides the EQ, so it doesn't work in the same way that the first channel, and that's where it's different from the mid-range. It's coming from this arrangement of the channel. So the treble is a lot lower. It's not that high treble. It's not that mid-rangey. The mid-range is almost a bass, and the bass is super low. Let's set the reverb. Okay, so it can get super thick, and this is the trick. Set the gain to about noon, 1 o'clock, and then use the other the EQ knobs to get more gain, more compressed, but kind of overdriving more the treble, overdriving more the mid-range. So you are kind of controlling separately, controlling the gain. Okay, and this is the end. This is the amp, but this is the Mesa Boogie, don't you forget. So, in the second channel, we have a second drive, kind of as if you put an EP booster or a boost into the amp, and it drives a lot more, and you have a switch to kick it in. So without it, So you can have the channel, the drive channel or the second channel having a little drive, and for a certain specific song you need more drive, you just kick in and more drive and you're there to the preset value that you selected here. I don't usually use it because I use pedals to do it. But since it is a Mesa Boogie, it also has another more feature. This extra drive knob has 3 voicings on it. A normal one, which is in the middle, a thick, and a thicker. So let's hear the 3 voices. So it's subtle, but it's kind of more compression, less treble, and more bass in 3 different variables. So it's a Swiss Army knife. Let's hear it on the tweed mode. So this is the normal. Tweed one. It's a feel thing. The tweed is a lot more compressed. It's the word, but it feels spongier. It even sounds quieter because it doesn't have that initial transient, so it's not, you don't have the spank. So when you're feeling that the amp is not compressing enough, if you turn the tweed mode on, you'll get a different feeling. But it's more of a feeling than I think it is of a sound, which is super important. A great thing about this amp, you have 2 channels, which is cool by itself, with master and separate gains and EQs, separate reverb volume. But on top of that, you still have a master for the whole amp, and a solo. So you can have the clean with the solo, the dirty with the solo, or you can have 2 cleans or 2 dirties. It depends on what you're feeling that day. And you still have a second drive to kick in. Unfortunately, it isn't foot switchable. That would be perfect, but it's really easy to access, and you have kind of 2 gain settings in the amp. I really love the amp, and that's why it's my main amp. I'm using it live for over 2 or 3 years since I've got it. And it's definitely my main amp. Let's take a listen at the 10 watt setting. So the 10 watt is a lot more compressed and a lot quieter. $50 watt. The clean channel on 10 watts. 50. So it's not that different sounding. It's super. It's a lot quieter, but it's the tone is practically the same, which is amazing for people that want to play in bedrooms or at homes, and they don't want to disturb the neighbors. This is a good way of getting good tone, quieter. But of course, you're missing. You're having all the things from the power amp, compression, all the things because you're running it on 10 watts, but you don't have the speaker compression, and it's sounding really good. It's sounding really convincing, at least to me. Well, that's it. I hope you have liked the episode. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and share it with the world. And we'll see each other next week.